President Trump beginning his second term with a number of executive actions from trade and immigration to the hiring of federal workers. Joining us right now is Marc Caputo. He is Axios Trump White House reporter. And Marc, a number of items doesn't really do it. We are less than 72 hours into this president's term, and they came ready to go. There were 100 actions and orders that were issued, I think, in the first day, many more since then. This is a huge storm to cover. What's your takeaway from what you've seen so far?
Well, they promised a shock and awe campaign, and they're delivering on that. And Trump is really concerned or interested in having a promises made, promises kept initial start to his first 100 days. So most of the things that he promised to do, he's doing. He said on day one that prices would come down, inflation would come down. That didn't happen. That's impossible to kind of have by fiat. But the sheer scope of the executive orders that you just kind of briefly touched on are just pretty breathtaking. Not only is it immigration and energy, there's transgender policy, there's a so-called woke policy here, diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is healthcare policy withdrawing from the World Health Organization. It's just on and on and on. It's going to take us weeks to figure out everything that he did in just those first 2 days.
I know that executive orders have been used more and more over the last 12 years, maybe a little longer than that. Can you give us a history lesson in how this measures up to what's been done in the past? And how many of the executive orders that he issued are undoing executive orders that other administrations put in?
Okay, I think it's on order of 80 or so that he undid from Biden's. The history of executive orders really tracks the history of the re-strengthening of the executive branch. You really saw it under George Bush. It wasn't just executive orders, executive actions. He would do things called signing statements, where he'd basically say, okay, I'm going to sign this law, but we're kind of not going to enforce it to a degree. But by and large, the executive orders are a clear sign for those who are interested in wonky history that Congress is failing at its job. The most powerful branch in the United States government is actually Congress. It's the only branch that can write laws, pass laws, kick a president out of office, reshape the Supreme Court, overturn basically everything. But it is so paralyzed by partisan politics, essentially can't do anything. That creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, the executive branch, the president has filled, and the Supreme Court to a great degree as well.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting thing. Congress can't even pass a budget at this point, let alone do any of the other powers.
They can barely name a post office these days. So that might change a bit because this Congress is, though the margins are small, controlled by Republicans, and by and large, they view Trump, well, they even call him daddy, as the boss. So you're probably going to see Byron Donalds, for instance, well, a fellow Florida man who is probably on track to being governor. He literally said, daddy is coming home. It's a riff on something that Tucker Carlson had said at the RNC, and actually something I'd written about a year ago, where people at Trump's campaign had said that after he had taken over control of the party by winning the primary, that, quote, daddy's home. So this is the general view of a lot of Republicans in Congress. So this Congress might be a little different. Nevertheless, there are going to be people who are going to resist his agenda. But Donald Trump is governing from a position of the greatest strength he's ever had, the greatest support levels he's ever had in his party and overall. And he also knows what he's doing, and he has a staff that knows what it is doing. And that's different from when he first took office.
That's right. These people are well-versed. They have a mission. They know what they want to do and how to go about it. I thought what was interesting, because it's not a surprise to me to see him overturn things that the Biden administration put in. It's just the swing back and forth of executive orders. But in going back, what I had not realized he was kind of targeting was he revoked decades of executive orders, including the Equal Employment Opportunity Order of 1965 that was signed by Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, that is something that trying to get DEI out, trying to go against all of those issues and change things. It's not just in the federal government. He also directed each agency to identify what it is, up to 9 potential civil compliance investigations of either publicly traded companies, large nonprofit corporations, associations, foundations with assets of $500 million of more, higher education institutions, on and on. So they want to make sure that this is not just the federal government, but it sets the standard for the nation.
Yeah, and in addition to that, the Office of OPB, the Office of Policy and Management, they had put out a memo that told employees, and then all the agencies subsequently have repeated the language that in order to get rid of DEI, they believe, the Trump White House believes, that some agencies have tried to implement these DEI programs, but by another name. So they've directed all employees to find these secret DEI programs and to report them with a special email. So critics are calling this a, quote, snitch email. It's a good example of how Trump is creating this sort of total information awareness aspect of his administration to get a handle on the entire executive branch. Also, there's the Schedule F issue, which gives him more ability to hire and fire more federal employees. It goes on and on and on. It's a really broad, deep, and wide number of executive orders that touch every aspect of the government and perhaps even American life.